She studied political science at NYU. She's done 8 years of Bharatnatyam, and she started working at the ground floor of her pharmaceutical company, and that is quite literally the ground floor in the sense where she started and worked from bottom top. It is a difficult journey, and that is something that is remarkable for somebody who could have chosen the other way per se. She is the perfect example of what we try to make at I.I.M.U.N, which is a global thinker who's rooted in the idea of India, and therefore you are already I.I.M.U.N in many ways per se. But this is your first time at the organization. She is currently, of course, a director for domestic marketing at Encore, and she wears many hats. But rather than reading her bio, which you can find out on the internet, please give a warm welcome to none other than Radhika Ambani. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Firstly, thank you for doing this.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so excited. Very few times am I the oldest person in the room. So excuse me if you all don't get my references.
No, you have one person who's slightly older than you.
You.
I didn't want you to say that, but now that you said it. You studied at NYU, studied Pol Science. You decided to come back to India. Why so? You could have chosen a life out there with better AQI and a very different world.
So, like, the world was different then. I graduated almost 10 years ago. I'm going to be an alumni for 10 years next year. So, I went to college in 2013 to 2017. Right? So, think about what was happening in America at that time. So, Trump was just becoming president. The election campaign was going on. And there was protests all the time. So, we had Take Over Wall Street. We had the Not My President movement, and I went to NYU. NYU is probably one of the most liberal places you could be in this world, right? We had Bernie Sanders, when he was running for president, give his speech from my campus.
Wow.
At Washington Square Park. Of course, Hillary's stronghold was Wall Street, again, my campus. So things were really in turmoil at that point. And then think about what was happening in India at that time. Right, the BJP was coming in with a huge mandate. We had unbelievable public infrastructure in terms of Aadhaar, UPI. Geo had come into effect. And it felt like the country of growth. So, who remembers Achhe Din Aayenge? I don't know if you all were too young. But basically, our Honorable Prime Minister, he came to America and he did this rally in Madison Square Park, and I went for that. And it just seemed like there was going to be so much promise in India. And there was all these buzzwords at that time, like ease of doing business.
Correct.
You know, things like that. So India felt, and we were growing at about 8.5% at that time. And they were growing at like 2 or 3%. So these were like vital decision points. And AQI and things like that are like great assets. I think there's an emotional infrastructure to life as well.
And that is
right?
India.
That is your parents, that is the community around you that has built you. I think to be able to build with an emotional infrastructure and to be able to carry out your life, it's a much bigger asset than to have roads and railways, in my opinion. As a person, it depends on your moral standing. Like I had a huge feeling of responsibility to build for the country.
As I keep mentioning, you got 800 million people below the age of 35. So technically, you've got the largest youth population in the world who is in India.
Yeah.
So when you're building for India, there are already so many consumers who are going to consume from India. So it only makes sense to come back to India, understand India per se, and then build for India.
Of course, build for India, from India, for Indians, by Indians, all of the above.
And you said something very interesting. You went to NYU and you saw the political climate out there. Would you go back to NYU if you were starting all over again at this juncture? You had just graduated from school, say, and 100%. You were to,
okay. So, I mean, things were different then. Like, even in that time, I thought, okay, I'll go for my master's. Visas and things were much easier then, coming, going back. Would I go back? I mean, I think being a global citizen and understanding that being on a campus where you can meet an Albanian and a Palestinian and an Israeli and you can all have an open conversation as students, I think that's a really beautiful thing. I wouldn't trade that for anything.
You know, you're a great example of somebody who is a global citizen and also locally rooted. And perhaps that has to do both with your university and then all your time that you spent in India. What does it mean to be locally rooted? What does it mean essentially to preserve Indian culture?
We think in systems and environments.
Correct.
And not as individuals first, right? So we have a responsibility to our families, our society, our country. But because of these generational roles that we play, I'm very confident that I'll be able to have my kids and like leave them with my mother or my mother-in-law. Even at a society level, I think we're liable to our actions because we play these roles really well. So I think it makes us better people. And generally also, I think Indian culture in this increasingly fragmented world where we're able to hold contradictions really well that I don't think globally people can do. Today, you're able to be like a wholly rounded person where you're able to celebrate your own culture, but you're also able to take in the culture of those around you and not only tolerate, but accept it. And those are two very distinct things. That is something of Indian culture we should never let go at any cost. So don't let anybody polarize you. How much ever your own social media is your own sound box and you go deeper and deeper into it, get out and read more opinions and allow for tolerance and allow for acceptance of those around you. I think it's a very beautiful thing that we have.
Indian culture, of course, and Indian sabhyata. जैसे आपने बात की, you know, where you spoke about the fact that oneness is there in India. And we see everything as a collective. We see everything as Vasudeva Kutumbakam. We see everything in Anikantvad. We always see things, the pluralist idea of the worldview is essentially an Indian idea per se as well. And many of these universal thoughts are rooted deeply in Indian culture. You spoke about something very interesting which haunts both them and me, and perhaps I would like to believe, is the algorithm. You spoke about social media and you said don't let social media drown us in the narrative war that is there.
Yeah.
So I'm just wanting to understand, how do you deal with the algorithm when the algorithm shows you things only which is one-sided? If you like a dog video, then only dog, you only see dogs.
Sounding box, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't get varied views and opinions.
So then how do you make sure that you also balance the two?
It's just detrimental to your mental health, and it's not adding any real value, right? And if you're on it, and if you're on it for your friends, that's great. If you're on it to learn and inform yourself, then you have to be really vigilant about the kind of content you're consuming. Because you have to know that today, for social media and for this algorithm, your mind space is essentially their commodity that they're trading on. That is how you're paying for it.
Well, what you said is so true about the algorithm. But another aspect of your personality, and I want to touch upon it, is that you dedicated 8 years to Bharatanatyam, and you did this alongside a degree and a career. So most people, they leave their passion per se behind in that sense. You continued pursuing your passion, finished your degree, so to say, and then continue to perform, is what I was trying to get at. And that in itself is quite commendable. What keeps you going when it comes to things like this?
I mean, there's many passions that I've let go of that you don't see, like, of course, political relations. But, I mean, Bharatanatyam for me is spiritual. It's my form of seva. I feel like I'm in prayer when I dance. And it's a temple dance form for those of you that know, and it's a way to tell stories, and it's a way for you to understand the stories of our gods. For me, I feel closer to my God when I dance. For other people, it may be in prayer, it may be in chanting, it may be in meditation, it may be in cooking. For me, it's dancing. So I have to keep that part of my life alive for my faith.
And when you talk about dance, there is another aspect, especially when it comes to women, because they are doing so much. And there is a perception that is there that a woman has to be both a global woman and also very locally rooted, especially when it comes to urban India. So my question is that when you have that narrative that is set, and when people see you from that lens, I don't particularly agree that people should be gauged by a particular lens, so to say. But when there is a lens that is given to you, and then you have to play to that lens, in that context, what does feminism mean to you?
So first, I think as a feminist, and I mean, I've grown up in a matriarchy. My mother's house is a matriarchy, and now I'm married into a matriarchy. So both my mother and my mother-in-law are very strong women, and catch them being told what to do by anybody. But I think as a feminist, we'll win on the day that this is no longer a question just for women, right? So your question is whether we should be seen as global citizens or local citizens, and the pressure to be cultural. But I think it starts with educating men and women today. Like, you have to educate the men also in the expectations of women and the way in which they respect women. Like, today, we are different, but we are equal. I don't think that even in my marriage, both of us are equal in every aspect. There are some places where Anant leads, and then there are some places that I lead. But overall, if we meet each other with respect, I think we're equal. Like, we have to go back to our culture as well. Like, India in general was a very matriarchal culture up until the British came. So even if you look at Nama Parvati Pataye Har Har Mahadev, what does that mean, right? Mahadev is the husband of Parvati. Anjani Putra Pavana Sutanama. What is that? Hanuman is the son of Anjani. All of our gods were known as the sons of their mothers, not the sons of their fathers. So today we have to be able to elevate the conversation of feminism not only as expectations of women, but also in the education we place on our boys. How do we achieve this autonomy? I think A is education, but also it really doesn't matter whose daughter you are or whose wife you become, or I don't know, or how comfortable you are in your life. You have to be able to have financial independence to be able to make your own decisions. Never be tied to something in your life because you don't have an option to get out. That is a very dangerous place, and if we don't allow for women's financial independence, then we will never achieve full equality in our community.
But a lot has to do with education, and a lot has to do with how education defines rules for them. And in that, one of the things that I've seen is education. And today itself, we had this conversation before you came in, that, you know, one of them asked me saying, how do you define success? And I said, society has taught us to define success by power or fame or money that one has to aggregate. And then a person who is really powerful or a person who is really rich is thought to be really successful. So what is your definition of success?
Power, fame and money are good metrics of success, right? Why are they metrics of success? It's because they're quantifiable. Money allows you scale, it allows you influence, and then you can genuinely make impact at a global level. Fame, again, it allows you to be able to influence other people, and if you have a platform, then only can people hear you, right? Like, you've built such a beautiful platform today, and that's why you're being able to influence people around you. Right? And then
I'm trying, but it's a little bit off.
But that's why you're able to do such good work, and that's why you're able to keep
Well, so
conversation alive,
Very
which
kind.
is so important. There's many ways to measure success. I think it depends. Like for me, when I started working, it was very difficult for me to genuinely contribute and find the reason to wake up every morning. So then every morning I would keep a benchmark. Have I increased jobs? And that is my running agenda in life, right? So that's one way to measure success. You have to understand how you are measuring your success in whichever field you are in. I think what's also important is that you continue to define success. Your success doesn't define you.
Why is it so important to serve society outside our CAS project or outside the SUPW? Some of them are in high school and it's mandatory in order to do social service. But why social service and serving society such a fundamentally important thing in life?
You can make impact in whatever capacity that you want. Today, I feel like I'm privileged enough to be able to create jobs and have that as my dharma, like you said. Impact as an artist is just about leaving the world as a net positive rather than a net negative when you leave it. So you have to decide what you are and how you're going to contribute to the world. And it can be in your interactions in your day-to-day life with people. Like, leave somebody happier than when they met you. And do it with kindness and inspire people in the next generation. If you're able to do that, I think you're going to leave the world a better place.
For some of us who are globally aware and read the newspaper every day, which is a mandate for the ones who are sitting out here, this is more applicable to the ones on camera who will perhaps see it later. When USA sneezes, the world yet catches a cold. And therefore, my question to you is, from the perspective of Indian pharmaceuticals and businesses more broadly, how do you think this shift in the geopolitical space as it currently is happening will impact India? And what are the pivots that Indian businesses must take in order to handle this?
See, as businesses, you have to be agile, right? You have to have diversity of markets. You have to be fundamentally lean in your cost structures. I mean, like maximize your margins wherever you can so that you can absorb issues that come like this. That's just a global rule of business to stay competitive in a capitalist world. Pharmaceuticals, I think we're good right now. Like if you look at it, I think the world needs us more than we need global markets. I think we've entrenched ourselves pretty strongly as the world leader as manufacturers today. So the Iran conflict, I think what plagues us as businesses and what plagues the country as a whole is what we know for a fact is that we're not energy self-reliant. And that is a huge issue. We cannot be a truly global superpower unless we become energy self-reliant. So my belief is that we will be eventually. I hope I get to see it. I think under Honorable Prime Minister, he's definitely taken this up as a mandate with biogas, solar, things like that. I hope we all get to see and celebrate the day that we can truly be a global superpower.
What you spoke about energy is important, and also another thing that I'm already celebrating in Bombay is that we have better infrastructure. That is something that they've done remarkably well in the country per se. That is in the BJP government.
Of
and
course.
I think they've done a great job with it.
Of course.
But when you spoke about pharmaceuticals, one of the things that you mentioned that India has become the pharmacy of the world. And it is something that essentially, whether it's an undeniable fact.
Yeah.
And what happened with COVID, the world saw, where we supplied medicine all across. But we're seen primarily as a low-cost manufacturing hub by so many people, and not necessarily as a leader in innovation and research per se. And I would like it to be such that the next Nobel laureates come from India. And we have a series where we call Nobel laureates and prime ministers and presidents to come and talk to them. And at that juncture, we're calling somebody from Sweden and we're calling somebody from somewhere else. And yes, we have people from India who won. But the idea that enough importance is not given to research. And how can we change that?
Firstly, low cost is innovation. Just think about the example of like, who knows what these GLP-1 drugs are? Do you guys know what they are? So basically, you all know Mounjaro and Ozempic and like this whole trend that's going on. So what these GLP-1 drugs are,
Sure.
all of these Indian companies are working on low-cost GLP-1 drugs. And that is going to transform this diabetes epidemic that we have in our country, right? Because it's important
Correct.
to start promoting medicine at low cost, at least for the people in our country, because they cannot afford these drugs at global prices. What you're talking about is NCEs, like new chemical entities, and developing like groundbreaking technology
and research. Yes.
in medicine and to be able to cure disease.
Correct.
We have everything required other than an attitude. I think we can easily get there if we dedicate money and attitude to it. Like, what do you need really, like in the stack, right? As a country, you need world-class research institutes and a great talent pipeline, which we have.
We have it.
Right? We have amazing regulators with the DCGI and we have local FTAs. We need some global lobbying so that they're taken more seriously, but I think that we can manage. Where we get stuck, I mean, we have the manufacturing capabilities as well.
So why is it not happening till now?
Because our funding infrastructure doesn't exist around it, right? And I think this is true for Indians in every field, is that I think we don't have the risk appetite like the rest of the world does. I think to put in billions of dollars in a drug that may fail, or like 2 out of 10 succeed, that is a very difficult thing to be able to do. So if we have attitude shifts and allocation of those resources and money put behind it, we can easily do it. I think hopefully your generation takes up this mandate and genuinely has that risk-taking appetite and has a safety net below you. I think we can do it. I think family businesses will do it less. I think when we institutionalize research and private entities together,
It'll happen.
it'll happen more.
The other thing is that research, at least in the West, and this is, it's called India's international movement to unite nations in a way. So we also, as much as the focus is on India, it's also on international. With the West, there is always the ability to be able to do research without a deadline in so many universities.
Yeah.
India, it sometimes is that you have to give the research, the research is for the cure immediately. And therefore, we don't invest in long-term research. And therefore, what you said about funding, I'm glad that you mentioned it. Out of all the people, that if we only...
But it's tough, right? It's a family business. Like today, if you ask me also, will I dedicate billions of dollars to a new chemical entity? No. Right, I'm a family business. It's difficult to do something like that if you don't have returns. We have our fathers looking over us and they're both Gujarati and my father and my father. So it's tough. I think when you have an institution that's really larger and is professionally run and has the ability to absorb those hits and is really truly entrenched and tied into research facilities, institutions and academics like they do in the West, then I think it's possible.
But public-private partnership is essentially, PPP out here is the solution, I think.
Is the solution. You're right.
Coming to the next thing, 300 million people, 30 crore people in schools and colleges. And my biggest worry sometimes is that it is a demographic dividend which can fast become a demographic disaster. And one of the gremlins of our time, of course, like you very well articulated, is the bane of social media. They need to be given the right opportunities and need to be given the right tools to make the right choices. The agency needs to be given per se. My question therefore to you is that what according to you is the biggest single most important thing that India must do right now to ensure that this generation becomes a dividend and not a disaster?
I don't think there's any country that can really function and absorb something like this on its own, right? 30 crore people is a huge number. So, other than, of course, creating the infrastructure in a constantly changing world, because God knows what kind of jobs and opportunities globally there are going to be when these 30 crore people enter the workforce. I think what's fundamentally important is that we train these people correctly to be able to embrace an ever-changing world, to be able to embrace the future. We make them competitive, problem solvers, entrepreneurial, intelligent, healthy. I think that if we grow a able and capable population, then they can be truly competitive at a global scale. Other than, like, of course, you and me in our generation to be able to create the infrastructure. We've had, 15 years in our workforce, and
Right.
we'll maybe have like 12 years in the workforce. We'll have 50 more at max.
Sure.
Right? In these 50 years, we have to definitely create an infrastructure to be able to absorb these people and to leave them with more than what we inherited. But I think what's more important is that we make sure that they are able to compete globally. Right? And I think then it ties back to like the feminism conversation, which is mothers are super important
Sure.
in this setup.
Mothers are super important. I was just talking the other day, the mothers need to be celebrated. And mothers today are celebrated in every form. When a mother becomes an entrepreneur, they're celebrated. A mother, or when a girl becomes an entrepreneur, she's celebrated. When a girl becomes an astronaut, she's celebrated. And I said humbly, saying my mom chose to become a homemaker. And a person who chooses to become a homemaker is equally as important per se. So
Of course.
in this entire context of empowering women, essentially the other choice, like I said, agency is important. Once we give them agency, and then beyond that, they are, I think, a smarter generation with a slightly complicated lingo, but in a better position to make most decisions. There is no doubt that technology is going to move really rapidly, and as it has in the last 25 years. And therefore, to be able for man to understand machine is imperative. And careers that we essentially grew up with, many of them today are obsolete. So therefore, what are the careers of the future? Or at least what are the skills that a person who's currently in school and college should focus on, such that their careers remain AI proof?
I mean, firstly, don't outsource your homework. Like, it'll make you dumber. Don't allow it for it to make you dumber. It's going to take a lot of like your creative thought if you allow it to, right? So I constantly try to practice creative writing because I realized like that entire muscle of my brain was not working. When we were growing up, right, when we were in school and all, wars were like a distant thought. It wasn't something that was threatening in the slightest. You know, and now it's like every few years there's something going on in some part where almost numb to it. The world is constantly changing and there are going to be new threats. I can't tell you what the jobs of the future are, because if you told me 10 years ago that there's somebody who's going to be able to make money by selling content of what they're doing on a day-to-day basis on the internet, I would not have believed you. So I can't tell you but you have to prepare yourself to be like agile and nimble, right? Like, again, you have to have first principles thinking. You have to be able to constantly evolve, constantly learn. Like today, even my father-in-law, I would say he's probably one of the most well-versed on technology out of everybody that I know. And he's constantly learning. So he was born before there was the phone, like he was used to listen to the news on the radio. So you have to just like constantly upgrade your skills, constantly prepare yourself and learn how to learn, right?
So important.
Don't compromise on the basics. So when you got the phone, did you stop learning how to read an analog clock? No, because there's value in understanding things spatially. There's value in understanding physics. There's value in understanding math. understood the fundamentals of math before we did 2 plus 2 on a calculator, right? So make your basics strong, learn how to think, learn how the world works, and then I think you'll be competitive in any field. I didn't study pharmaceuticals, but I work in it. Like, I don't know what you ended up studying.
Finance.
Yeah, but you're leading. Yeah, exactly.
Amit pass.
So
Yes.
who knows what the world has? Like, I don't know, but don't allow that to take away your joy of learning. Like, constantly want to upgrade yourself, and then you'll do well. And smart kids, engaged.
Another thing I must ask you, because you said that you were leading the company now and you have been doing so much in terms of expanding the company. What has been the most difficult thing for you? Like for me, the biggest challenge and the biggest problem was to be taken seriously when I started the organization. 15 years ago, I was half my size, if that's possible. And at that juncture, to go to somebody and say that, this is what we're trying to do, create leaders and they're going to think for the country, etc. And then they would ask saying, spell leader first, Rishabh. So the idea that to be able to be taken seriously was a great problem that I faced. Was there anything, what was the most challenging thing that you faced in your tenure at the helm?
I don't know if you guys, but mine is like more internal. I think it's like about self-doubt. Like I was a good student. I'm like constantly, I was an engaged student. I did well in college, things like that. And when you're constantly excelling at things, you're always told you're going to do great things, you're going to do great things, you're going to do great things. And then when the time comes for you to actually do, you have such a fear of failure that you don't end up really acting on anything. It took me a long time, like I'm in my 30s now, I'm 31. All of my 20s, I had this massive fear of failure. So I would constantly only follow, right? Because I thought that if I do and if I fail, then what everybody's constantly said about me will become a lie. And I'm not really that I'm not really that intelligent, or I'm not really that capable. So that was tough for me to get over.
No, thank you for sharing this.
Yeah.
Because there's so much of pressure, especially now, on young people in order to succeed. And we have a summer internship that's going on at this juncture, and I was talking to some of the summer interns, and one kid asked me saying that, what if I don't decide what I want to be? There's so much of pressure. My family's telling me you're good at this, you have to do this.
Yeah.
And therefore, Radhika, the issue essentially is that in a generation that's already so pressurized, it's okay to fail sometimes. And failure is just another stepping stone in your life. So I'm glad that you shared
And
what
you will fail.
No, small rapid fire to conclude my part of the conversation. And then we have a big hamper.
Oh, wow.
And one word or one line that comes to mind when you hear the following things. A book you believe everyone should read.
Bhagavad Gita.
A film that's had a lasting impact on you.
Lagan.
The last OTT show you binge watched.
Friends, always. Just constant. You saw my car today? This is my biggest luxury in my life. My car.
Okay.
It has a TV.
Right. And there's Friends on it.
And there's Friends on it on the way to work, on the way back from work, every day.
Which is the character that you relate to the most?
Rachel, I love her.
When I say youth, what comes to mind?
Future.
India.
Narendra Modi.
One thing that you wish that you knew when you were 16.
Don't get scared to fail, guys. Like, dream huge and it's possible. It is all possible. You just have to do the small things. Don't get scared of the big things.
And this is your first time at I.I.M.U.N. What's the first thought when I say India's international movement to United Nations or I.I.M.U.N?
Important.
Now it is all right. we could take a few questions from
Yeah,
them. Yeah, would
sure.
that be okay? Super. Rudra?
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi.
So, firstly, thank you for coming here. And so, my question is that Encore has scaled globally in reactive medicines and dealing with chronic health issues like diabetes and metabolic issues. But now that the world is shifting towards more proactive and preventive medications, and also along with that, India, the high stress and urban population is dealing with chronic issues more, and like it is pushing these chronic issues into the workforce like a decade earlier than in the Western countries.
Okay.
So, like, I want to know what are your views on preventive medication and how you can introduce it to the majority working population in India.
Okay, so mass implementation of medicine in general in India, I think we're very well suited to be able to do something like that because we have UPI, we have Aadhaar, we have DigiLocker, all of these different things, if it's done at a government level. About preventative medicine and wellness overall and preemptive medicine, which are nutraceuticals, right? Pharmaceuticals are separate and nutraceuticals are separate. I think those are also super important, and I think that they have their place. We've been struggling with this a lot at Encore, is that can a truly pharmaceutical company understand OTC nutraceuticals in its ethos? And the answer that I've come to is no. So I think you need a separate culture completely within the company to be able to succeed at both of these different things.
Hi, the girl at the very end, Dia. Yeah.
You worked and did internships in different professional environments before entering your family business. So, how did those experience influence your leadership style right now, and what challenges did you face back then?
I mean, I did internships to figure out what I wanted to do. I didn't even do that many when I was in college and I was graduating, that summer internship, I did it at a legal firm that was handling the M&A for Encore. A part of Encore got sold to Torrent Healthcare and I represented the legal aspect of that translation. So I was already kind of working at Encore. After I came back, I wanted to work outside just to get exposure. I didn't feel confident enough to be taken seriously at Encore. And I worked at this company called Isprava, and I worked under Nibran Shah, who is probably one of the people that has had the largest influence in my life. So I think if you find a great mentor and you're able to genuinely dedicate time and effort to them and they care about you growing as a person, he knew that I wasn't in there for the long haul, but he still invested time. I remember like 8 p.m. on a Friday after the work week was over, he would sit and give me like HPS cases to review because he knew that I wasn't going to end up going for my MBA. It's something that I wish I had done. So if you find somebody that can truly dedicate their time and energy to you, that's probably the most beautiful thing as a young adult.
And hopefully at I.I.M.U.N you have a few. Super. Other questions? Hi.
Hello, ma'am. How you rose right from the bottom level of your own organization to the top level organization? How did you decide when to trust advice, when to listen to advice, and when to trust your own instincts?
It took a long time. I think, look, when you start seeing results based on actions that you've taken, you can trust yourself more. Up until then, like it took a long time for me to not defer to the opinion of the people that have been there since before I started working. And then when you take small actions, like say you make a decision or you launch a product that gets taken in well, or you decide to do an expansion and then in 3 years you're like at a good break even, or whatever it is that you choose your path is. And if you are successful, then you trust yourself more like you will with anybody in your organization. And you have to be very clear, are you the best person for that job? you the best decision maker in that role? You have to remove your ego from that environment and genuinely decide. Like today, I know in certain operations, I'm not as effective as some other people in the organization. I will never question their judgment over mine. So you have to remove ego from the equation and understand what is best for the business.
Hi, my name is Ritma. My question to you was, traditional business models were built around, of course, hierarchy and stability, while younger generation entering the workforce today value transparency, flexibility, purpose, individuality, much more. How do you think organizations today can balance both approaches while still maintaining strong productivity and performance?
I think organizations will evolve constantly by the people that are leading them. If we can just give an example, like we have a lot of young people coming into the workforce today that are very different from, say, the older generation that we had. So we have somebody who works in purchase. He has, I think, taken a total of maybe 10 days off in 10 years or something like that. We don't have that culture in the next generation. I don't have that culture, right? As an organization, if you want good talent and you want to absorb and retain that good talent, you have to constantly evolve for the people that you have working for you. And you have to accept that, okay, today people are a lot more efficient with the kind of tools, with AI, going back to it, global information, education systems, than people were earlier. So maybe they're working less hours or they're working differently. They're able to work from anywhere. You have to allow for these changes and allow for people to really have lives outside of work, I think, as organizations.
My question to you is, as you mentioned about mentors, and as you also mentioned about how you've learned from different people. So we at organizations also have our mentors that help us to guide in and outside of the organization. But after a point when we leave the organization, we are again going to go into the professional world where we'll have to find our own mentors, as you also went out of Encore and found your own. So, what are the few skills and qualities that per se that you have adapted or kept with you out of all the mentors that you have had in your life, and that you practice daily that we could also practice in general to grow ourselves, and how we can look better?
I mean, one thing Nibs told me, Nibran, that like constantly is in my mind is that if you start in sales in any company, you really understand the company because you have to understand the finance, you have to understand the product, you're the closest to the consumer. So that's what I ended up doing. In terms of practice, one is, I think, when I see the people around me and the generation above me, like my parents and my in-laws, I see how dedicated and hardworking they are, and I try to emulate that as much as possible. Because they have purpose, I think they're not getting old, you know, and their purpose is constantly pushing them to do better, to learn more. So that's something that I think, like, there's no shortcut to hard work. No matter what you are doing, whichever field you're in. So I think that's a big one.
Now, but we've run out of time, unfortunately. What I would say is, to answer your question as well, is have good role models, and essentially having role models around after you finish your work also is very important. One who I had was Rahul Dravid. And Rahul, of course, apart from being a great cricketer, the kind of life that he led deeply impacted me. Quite low profile, but hopefully high impact. And in his case, in my case, we're yet questioning. But the idea essentially is that if you have good people whom you look up to, like she said that, you know, her parents and her in-laws are people essentially that that she looks up to. So like that, I think if you have those kind of people, it'll help per se.
Yeah.
Say this very rarely because...
have you met him?
Who? Yes, I have. Yes.
They say never meet your heroes, but you're...
But in this case,
It helped.
It helped. It turned out to be positive, so it's nice. And I think having a great sounding board is also important. So perhaps that is equally relevant once you step out of the organization, to have a good sounding board per se. I'll say this as we conclude. There are some conversations that you remember. This one I'll remember for very many things. One definitely for being told Rishabh research. Two, more specifically for the fact that she spoke so candidly and she covered areas that weren't discussed as well. So thank you for doing that. I really appreciate that. The fact that you've covered some life experiences which are actually very helpful, and therefore I was keen that you start with the organizing team and that you talk to them first. And third, I will tell you this, that there are very few who can speak about very many topics per se. And this is one thing that I really admired about you, the fact that you were able to traverse right from pharmaceuticals and talk about right from Ozempic all the way to talking about Donald Trump, and then compare what is happening in our country and then bring it back and tie it back to building morally conscious future leaders. So that's what we're trying to do at I.I.M.U.N, trying to create more Radhikas. And therefore, if you don't find a role model outside, I think we brought you one today.
Please subscribe for more.